I really want to do for the next 8 months, whether or not I get up, it's a long shot. But what I do want to do in the next 8 to 10 months is go back to the original reason why I ran for politics, which was to raise issues about taxation, monetary policy and efficiencies in the government. Mm-hmm. So my background, I've got a Masters of Commerce, a Masters of Tax Law and a Masters of Finance. There's a lot of sections in the Tax Act that need reforming. We don't use enough levers with our monetary policy. I explained a bit of that last time I spoke to you. There's things like, say, for example, I've put out 5 policies that I want to push. One is to lift the tax-free threshold to $40,000. I've always thought it's unfair that if businesses can get a tax deduction for the cost of doing business, why can't workers get a tax deduction for the cost of living?
Yeah.
And that would immediately put about $3,000 into the pockets of the low-income earners. And one of the things that people don't realise is Treasury doesn't model secondary impacts or the velocity of money. Mm-hmm. Now, that matters when you're giving income tax cuts, because an income tax cut to a low-income earner, most of that will end up back in Treasury coffers through increased GST, company tax, increased employment in the next 12 months versus a tax cut for someone on the high tax threshold, which I'm happy to lower tax rates there as well, because I hate income tax. The lower the income tax rates, the better. So, and I want to pay for that basically by getting rid of the Environment Department in Canberra. We don't need 2 departments in Canberra.
Of course we don't.
Or renewables.
We don't need it at all. Ridiculous. I don't know why they invented the second one.
Yeah, so get rid of the Environment Department, get rid of subsidies for renewables, means tested defined benefit scheme. There was some reports in the media last week how David Anderson, the guy who just quit the ABC, will be getting about $400,000 a year until he retires. There are billions of dollars. That needs to be means tested. It is just a largesse, rivers of gold for a small number of retired white-collar bureaucrats. So that's how I intend to pay for those tax cuts. I want to get childcare going straight to the parents. I want to give them greater choice and empower the family as to how they raise their children. You've got millions of shift workers in this country who can't pick their child up at 6 o'clock. You've got policemen, nurses, hospitality workers, taxi drivers, truck drivers who work past 6 o'clock at night. They don't have access to childcare. They can't put their child into an institutionalised childcare centre. So I want to give them greater flexibility as to how they can have a nanny to come to their house, for example. Part-time workers might only work 3 hours a day or 4 hours a day. Why are they paying for 12 hours childcare? Yeah. Fly-in, fly-out workers, you're on the mines for 7 to 10 days and then you come home. Why are you paying for childcare when you're at home with your child? Why would you want to put him in childcare if you've got a couple of days off with you? That's your weekend. Why pay for childcare if you're not using it?
Yeah.
So, and then you've got farmers, they can't get access to childcare either, and many of them would actually need a nanny. They would prefer a nanny on the homestead to look after their children. So I want a great, and that should be just about revenue neutral, because all we're doing is transferring the payment to the parents, not the childcare centres.
Yes.
And what that would do would actually reduce demand on the childcare centres, which should reduce costs as well, because not as many people would need those services. It's like you're funneling all these children through the little narrow bottleneck of institutionalised childcare rather than having a much broader range of options 24 hours a day across all the regions. The third thing is I want to make superannuation voluntary. Superannuation is nothing but glorified communism. We now have $3 trillion in consolidated wealth controlled by about 20 superannuation funds in this country, of which a large number of industry funds. And all those industry funds put their vote together with one proxy advisor at AGMs and control over 20% of most blue chip companies on the ASX. So now we've got, basically productivity, our industry. If you control $3 trillion in capital, you control industry. And when you're controlling industry by the woke people in the unions, you've now got your industry being driven by ideology and not productivity. So we need to actually, and the other thing is, there's still 50% of retirees today are on a full pension, the same number as what there was in 1992. Superannuation has done nothing to get low-income earners or retirees off the pension. They've shifted the part pensioners from 27%, so this is on top of 50, so it's come down from 77 to 71, but half of that drop, that 6% drop, was when Morrison changed the indexation laws in 2016 election. So superannuation has barely touched the sides on getting people off the pension, but it's worth $50 billion in tax concessions for the upper, mainly 25%, but the pension costs about $54 billion, and that goes out to 50% of people on low incomes plus the 21% on part. on the part pension as well. So very ineffective. And then plus there's $30 billion in fees to shuffle paper and basically for the glorified white-collar executives in those ivory palaces in Sydney and Melbourne.
What you're standing up for in terms of childcare and also superannuation makes a great deal of common sense, and people should unpack what you are going to say in front of the banner of your new party and consider it very carefully. Can I ask you this, just back to the politics of it? The Libertarian Party in particular are angry with you because they wanted you to join them, not form your own party. Why didn't you do that?
Look, I mean, I'd like to be an independent, really, even though I accept that there does need to be a merger. And if I did get back in, long shot, I would certainly work on working with some minor parties, but I don't have a lot of time between now. I didn't know when the next election was going to be called. But look, my one problem with the Libertarians is that they're neoliberals. So I'm a protectionist, and I've always criticised the neoliberals within the Liberal Party. So the neoliberals in the 80s, this reckless neoliberal ideology, basically believed in privatising all our infrastructure. And they basically let the markets rip in the 1980s. Well, guess what? When we took our hands off the reins of power, i.e. the protectionists, the communists and Marxists couldn't believe how lucky they were. And they said, well, if you're not going to take the reins of power, we will. They then decided to let manufacturing go offshore with the Button Plan. They then brought in the Dawkins Plan, where they sent everyone to university to get brainwashed and broke. They introduced communism, and Howard Costello went along with this too in 96, I might add. They should have kiboshed superannuation then. New Zealand had a referendum on compulsory superannuation and they voted against it 92% to 8%. Do you think if Paul Keating went to an election in 1992 and said by 2025 you want 12% of your income taken from you and given to someone you'd never met and you might get it back when you're 67, do you think people would have voted for it?
No.
Don't think so.
Authorised G. Rennick People First Chermside.